After 15 years of marriage, Angela Carter believed she had earned respect. But one phone call shattered everything. Her husband had canceled her invitation to his own brother's wedding while keeping the $50,000 she had paid for it. 15 years of loyalty erased in an instant. Angela Carter had devoted her best years to building a family, standing beside a man she trusted. Yet, in just a few short moments, it was all wiped away. One call, one cold sentence. Her husband had canceled her invitation to his brother's wedding while keeping the enormous sum she had paid. She was a black woman who had endured dismissive glances and subtle scorn from her husband's family, only to be pushed aside as if she never mattered. The betrayal cut deeper than the money. It was the humiliation of being erased. But David and the Carter family had overlooked one truth. Angela was never just a wife. She was a woman of power, capable of shifting the ground beneath their feet with a single, calculated decision. If you've ever felt invisible after giving everything, if you've ever been dismissed despite your sacrifices, this story will strike at the very core of your heart. Angela sat frozen in her Atlanta office, 30 floors above the restless city. The skyline stretched wide before her, but her mind was trapped inside one cruel phrase. Your husband canceled your invitation. The words echoed, each repetition sharper than the last. She leaned back in her leather chair, her hands gripping the armrests as if the ground itself had shifted. 15 years of sacrifice, of loyalty, of keeping a family together, swept aside with one phone call. Her husband had not only erased her from his brother's celebration, he had done it while holding on to the $50,000 she had given. The betrayal felt heavy, almost physical, pressing on her chest. Angela's breath came slow, shallow. She had built her world on strength, on composure, on never letting them see her break. But in that silent office, she felt something crack. The hum of traffic below reminded her that life outside kept moving. Yet, inside these walls, Angela's world had stopped. What hurt most was not the money. It was the message. To them, she was disposable. Angela Carter was not an ordinary wife. She was the CEO of Carter Hospitality Group, a name known across the South. She owned hotels, event spaces, and catering companies that defined luxury in Atlanta and beyond. Her employees respected her. Competitors feared her. Clients sought her. But none of that mattered inside the Carter family. To them, she was just David's wife, a black woman who, in their words, did a little catering. At dinner tables filled with David's white relatives, her voice was often ignored, her presence politely tolerated but never truly welcomed. When she spoke of business, they brushed it off with forced smiles. When she achieved another acquisition, they called it luck. Every triumph was reduced, every title dismissed. The family chose blindness, because acknowledging her success meant acknowledging her power. Angela carried those slights quietly. She had told herself that patience was strength, that silence was dignity. But silence, she now realized, had only taught them to belittle her more. The betrayal she faced today was not sudden. It was the climax of years of being underestimated, of being treated as less, because of her race, her gender, and her unwillingness to fight back at the table. 3 weeks earlier, the family had gathered for dinner. The air was warm with chatter, but tension settled over Michael, David's younger brother, and his fiancée, Sarah. They spoke with forced smiles, but their voices carried worry. The wedding they dreamed of was far beyond their reach. Michael admitted that, as an architect, his income barely stretched across bills. Sarah's student loans weighed heavy, and the mortgage left little room for celebration. They talked about cutting corners, cheap food, folding chairs, even a courthouse ceremony. Sarah's eyes welled with quiet disappointment. Angela listened. She stayed silent as they spoke of sacrifices. Then, later that evening, she slipped a check across the kitchen counter. $50,000. Her only request, keep it anonymous. Let it be their day, she whispered to Linda, David's sister-in-law. They should not feel indebted. It was generosity born from love, from her desire to see the couple happy. Yet, in that moment, Angela unknowingly planted the seed of betrayal. By keeping her gift hidden, she handed her husband and his family the perfect chance to erase her. The check that could have united them would soon divide them in ways she could never imagine. David Carter had always lived in the shadow of his wife's achievements. Each new hotel she opened, each contract she signed seemed to shrink him further. Where others saw Angela's brilliance, he saw only a reminder of his own mediocrity. So he twisted her generosity into his own glory. At family dinners, he let them believe the $50,000 was his gift. He smiled as Michael thanked him. He accepted Sarah's gratitude, and he painted Angela as agreeing to step aside from the wedding to avoid family conflict. Behind closed doors, he assured his relatives that she was fine with being left out. He told them it was better this way, that Angela didn't like the spotlight. His lies gave them comfort, while stripping his wife of dignity. To David, it was a way to reclaim control, to prove he was still the man in charge. But, in reality, it revealed the depth of his insecurity. Angela had given out of love. David had taken out of envy. And soon, the mask he wore before his family would collide with the truth he had tried so hard to bury. The phone rang again the next morning. Angela answered, her voice steady, though her heart was still heavy. Another wedding planner spoke on the line, her words carried unease. "Mrs. Carter, I need to confirm something unusual. Your husband instructed us yesterday to remove your name from all guest lists, but he was very clear that the $50,000 should remain in place." Angela's chest tightened. One phone call could have been a mistake. Two meant something else. This was not confusion. This was coordination. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers cold against the glass desk. David had erased her not once but across every detail. Seating charts, invitations, announcements, all stripped of her name. Yet her money was untouched. The planner hesitated, as if embarrassed to continue. "It's rare, Mrs. Carter. We have never seen the main contributor excluded like this." Angela thanked her calmly, but inside, realization hit. This was no accident. It was a plan. A plan to use her, to silence her, to erase her while keeping the fruits of her labor. Her phone buzzed minutes later. David's name lit up the screen. For a moment she hoped for an apology. Instead, she read words that cut deeper than any blade. "Stop being dramatic. You're not coming. We're keeping the money since you offered it as a gift. We'll talk when you calm down." Angela stared at the message. Her hands trembled as the meaning sank in. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a text that dismissed her pain as drama. Her generosity turned into a weapon against her. The phrase, "when you calm down," burned. It was the voice of a man who saw her anger not as righteous, but as hysteria. He had stolen her dignity, her presence, and her money, and now he mocked her as if she were a child. She set the phone down, her pulse heavy in her ears. This was more than betrayal. It was erasure. The man who vowed to honor her had stripped her of the right to even stand beside him as family. The phone rang again that afternoon. This time it was Evelyn, David's mother. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed. "Angela, dear, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We all want Michael to have his day without trouble. This is for his happiness." Before Angela could respond, another call came through. Linda, her sister-in-law, echoed the same script. "You've been stressed, Angela. Maybe sitting this one out is best. Don't create drama. Just let it go." Their voices carried the same message. She was not family, only a wallet. A black woman who bought her seat at the table but never earned their respect. Angela listened in silence, her heart sinking. They had all agreed. They had decided that her presence was a threat, but her money was a blessing. The betrayal was not David alone. It was the entire family, weaving lies, excusing theft, and cloaking it in the language of harmony. In their eyes, Angela was not a wife, not a sister, not a daughter-in-law. She was only $50,000. Angela hoped Michael at least would understand. He had always been kind, always grateful. So she called him, her voice steady but trembling inside. "Michael, did you know David canceled my invitation?" she asked. There was a pause, then his tone shifted. "Angela, you offered that money as a gift. Gifts don't come with strings. You should let it go." The words cut deeper than David's text. This was the man whose wedding she had saved, the man who had cried over bills, who had no way to give Sarah the day she dreamed of, and now he dismissed her sacrifice as nothing more than a casual gift. Angela closed her eyes, her breath heavy. It wasn't only David. The betrayal reached into the very heart of the family. Even the one she had lifted up had turned against her. The pain was not about dollars, it was about love twisted into entitlement. She had given freely, and in return they erased her, then dared to tell her that generosity demanded silence. That night, the Carter house was silent. The rooms were wide, filled with expensive furniture, polished wood, and glass that sparkled in the moonlight. Yet Angela felt no warmth inside those walls. She lay in the king-sized bed beside David. He slept soundly, his breathing calm, as if nothing had been done. Angela turned away, tears stinging her eyes. 15 years of marriage had led to this moment, lying next to a stranger who saw her only as a source of money. The emptiness pressed in from every corner, the laughter, the trust, the sense of partnership, they had vanished. She realized she had been carrying the marriage alone, feeding it with her loyalty, while David drained her strength without offering love in return. Her chest ached as she stared into the dark. 15 years together, and yet she had never felt more alone. Morning light brought no relief. Angela walked into her office, her mind still heavy. She picked up the phone and dialed Marcus Chin, her longtime business partner. He answered quickly, his tone warm but sharp when he heard her voice falter. She told him everything. The canceled invitation, the lies, the $50,000 taken as if it were nothing. Silence hung for a moment. Then Marcus spoke with clarity. "Angela, that is not family. That is fraud." His words struck deep. For the first time in days, she felt understood. Marcus did not tell her to calm down. He did not excuse their behavior. He called it what it was: betrayal, theft, exploitation. Angela leaned back, closing her eyes. In the storm, she had found one voice that gave her strength. Marcus reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. She was not powerless. She was not invisible. She was Angela Carter. Angela sat at her mahogany desk, the morning sun spilling across stacks of folders. Her hands trembled as she pulled one contract after another from the drawer. She scanned the headers, the fine print, the signatures, and slowly, the truth came into focus. Desert Rose Weddings, Copper Trail Catering, Blue Ridge Resort. Every name she read carried the same small notation at the bottom: Carter Hospitality Group. Her breath slowed, then steadied. All of it, every vendor, every service, every reservation, was tied to her empire. For years she had built quietly, expanding her reach while letting others dismiss her as a wife who handled events. They never noticed the scale of what she owned. The family thought they had erased her. They believed she was powerless, that her money was theirs to spend. But the ground beneath their dream wedding was hers, and theirs was built on her foundation. Angela closed the folder. A sharp calm spread through her chest. This was no longer just betrayal, this was business. And in business, she had never once allowed disrespect to go unanswered. Angela picked up the phone, her voice even, her tone controlled. "This is Angela Carter. Effective immediately, cancel all services related to the Carter-Walsh wedding. Every contract, every booking, every reservation." The planner stammered on the other end. "Mrs. Carter, are you certain? The event is in just a few weeks." "I am certain," Angela interrupted, her words clipped. "Terminate everything. Document the cancellations, notify the vendors, and do not call my husband again. He has no authority here." Her hand did not shake as she hung up. The silence that followed was heavy, but Angela felt no regret. The family had chosen to humiliate her while clinging to her money. Now, they would watch their grand celebration unravel in the very hands they had tried to erase. It was the first time in years she allowed herself to act without hesitation. No compromises, no appeasement, no explanations. Only power, directed where it mattered. For 15 years, Angela had been underestimated. That era ended with a single phone call. It began with Linda's voice, shrill and cracking over the phone. "Angela, they've all canceled. The venue, the hotel, the caterer, everyone. No one will take us, not one vendor. What's happening?" Angela leaned back in her chair, listening as if she were handling a routine business complaint. Her tone was calm, almost gentle. "That sounds concerning, Linda." Linda sobbed. "We've called everywhere in Atlanta, even Savannah. Everything is booked, or they refuse to work with us. Do you understand? We have nothing." Angela let the silence hang, her composure steady. For years she had heard their dismissive tones, endured their whispers about her being just the black wife with a catering hobby. Now the roles were reversed. They begged, and she decided. The family's dream was collapsing. What had once been certain now turned fragile. Angela didn't need to raise her voice. She only needed to withhold. And in withholding, she revealed where the true power had always rested. The next call came from Michael. His tone was tight, controlled, but beneath it Angela could hear panic. "Angela, tell me honestly, is someone sabotaging my wedding? Vendors don't all cancel on the same day unless someone is pulling strings." Angela paused, choosing her words carefully. "Perhaps. Someone with more power than you realize decided things should go differently." Michael's breathing quickened. So, this is deliberate. Who would do this to us? Angela let a faint trace of steel enter her voice. Michael, you might want to ask yourself why people assume they can take and erase without consequence. He tried to argue, but the words stumbled out half-formed. His confidence was gone. The architect who had prided himself on structure now found his own wedding collapsing with no foundation left. Angela ended the call with quiet finality. For the first time, it was not she who was left powerless. It was them. David stormed into their bedroom, his face flushed, his voice sharp. Angela, you've destroyed everything. Michael is furious, vendors are calling, and the family says you've gone too far. But beneath the anger, his tone shook. The man who once held the upper hand now sounded like someone slipping out of control. His fists clenched, but his eyes betrayed fear. Angela stood by the window, arms crossed, calm against his storm. I destroyed nothing, she said evenly. I simply ended what I built. You tried to erase me while keeping my money. This is the result. David's voice cracked. This was supposed to be about family harmony. You've made me look like a fool. Angela met his gaze with a quiet strength he had ignored for years. No, David. You did that yourself. You wanted power without earning it. Now everyone can see who really holds it. For the first time in 15 years, the argument ended not with her silence, but with his. Within days, the hospitality world in Atlanta buzzed with whispers. Contracts canceled. Vendors frozen. An entire wedding dismantled with one phone call. People wanted to know, who had that kind of reach? The answer spread quickly: Angela Carter. Hotel managers reviewed their client lists with new caution. Caterers who once brushed her aside now realized their businesses depended on her. Competitors who had underestimated Carter hospitality discovered they had been circling an empire far larger than they imagined. One magazine headline captured it best: the quiet mogul behind Atlanta's hospitality power shift. To vendors, she was no longer a background figure. She was the center. Every supplier in the city understood they answered not to David, not to Michael, but to Angela. And with that revelation came respect, tinged with fear. The woman who had been dismissed as the wife with a catering hobby was revealed as the one controlling the very ground the industry stood on. Angela summoned them all: David, Michael, Sarah, Evelyn, Linda, to Carter Hospitality's headquarters. The family filed into the 32nd floor conference room, their faces pale, their steps unsure. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled light across polished wood and walls lined with awards. The air itself felt heavy, charged with authority. Angela sat at the head of the table, wearing navy blue, her posture straight, her silence commanding more than any raised voice could. The family shifted uncomfortably in leather chairs that cost more than most of their monthly salaries. For years, they had spoken over her at family dinners. Now they sat wordless, surrounded by proof of the empire she had built while they dismissed her. Angela's gaze swept the room. You wanted me invisible. You wanted my money, but not my presence. Today, you will see me for who I am. The words cut through the silence like glass. For the first time, the Carter family realized the woman they had pushed aside was the one holding every card. The silence broke when Michael stood, his shoulders tense, his voice low. Angela, I owe you an apology. I should have questioned it. I should have spoken up when they erased you. What we did was wrong. His eyes met hers, steady but ashamed. For the first time, Angela saw a trace of sincerity, but David cut in, his voice sharp. Angela, you're overreacting. I was trying to protect the wedding. You know how dramatic things can get. I just wanted to avoid unnecessary conflict. Angela turned toward him, her face calm but unyielding. Avoid drama? By stealing $50,000 from me? By erasing me as if I don't exist? David's mouth opened, but no words came. His excuse, thin as paper, crumbled under the weight of her question. The room fell silent again, except this time the silence belonged to Angela. Everyone else shifted, uneasy, as the truth of her words settled like stone. Angela placed a folder on the table and slid it forward. Her voice was steady, deliberate. If you want this wedding to happen, you will pay $75,000 in advance. You will write formal apologies, every one of you, and during the reception, you will publicly acknowledge what happened. Gasps filled the room. Evelyn's face turned pale. Sarah whispered, 75. Yes, Angela replied firmly. 50,000 was stolen. This new sum is the cost of rebuilding what you destroyed. Think of it as tuition for learning respect. David shook his head, muttering, "This is impossible." Angela leaned forward slightly. "Then there will be no wedding. Vendors will remain canceled. Guests will be left with empty invitations. The choice is yours." The ultimatum hung heavy in the air. There was no bargaining, no compromise, only terms, final and clear. By the next evening, the response arrived. Michael delivered it himself. 3 checks totaling $75,000, along with a stack of handwritten letters. Angela read them in silence. Evelyn's words were formal, stiff, but apologetic. Linda's letter wavered between excuses and regret. David's was the shortest, a grudging admission wrapped in bitterness. Only Michael's sounded sincere, acknowledging betrayal without defense. Angela set the papers aside, her expression unreadable. The family had done what they once swore they never would. They bent. Their pride had cracked under the weight of her conditions. For years, they had viewed Angela as expendable. Now they paid, in money and in ink, to keep their celebration alive. The wedding would move forward, but under her terms. The message was clear. The family who dismissed her as invisible now bowed to the woman they had underestimated. Weeks later, the wedding finally took place. But it was not the lavish spectacle Michael and Sarah had first imagined. The guest list was smaller, the decorations simpler, the tone far more restrained. What had once been planned as a show of status was now a quiet, elegant gathering, every detail directed under Angela's control. The venue was beautiful, but understated. Wildflowers instead of towering bouquets, a string quartet instead of a grand orchestra, fewer faces in the crowd, but every one of them chosen with care. And yet, what stood out most was not the decor nor the music. It was the atmosphere. Every guest could feel it, the unspoken knowledge that this celebration existed only because Angela allowed it. She had reshaped the day into something honest, something that carried her signature, not theirs. Conversations whispered around the hall. "That's Angela Carter. She saved the wedding." Heads turned toward her, eyes studying the woman once dismissed as an outsider. The wedding was theirs in name, but everyone in the room understood. The real authority belonged to her. Dinner was nearly finished when Michael stood, his hands trembling as he clutched the microphone. The room quieted, all eyes on him. He cleared his throat and began. "I want to speak honestly tonight. This wedding almost didn't happen, and the reason it stands here before you is one person, Angela Carter." A ripple moved through the crowd. Michael continued, his voice cracking. "We treated her generosity as if it were ours to take. We excluded her when she was the one who gave us everything. Without Angela, there would be no wedding. Without Angela, Sarah and I would have nothing." His words echoed across the hall, breaking the shield of silence that had long covered the family's treatment of her. Angela sat still, her gaze calm, her expression unreadable. Yet the room responded for her. Guests nodded, some even clapped softly, moved by his confession. For the first time, the family's wrongdoing was acknowledged not in private letters, but in public. The man who had once accepted her money without thanks now stood before everyone admitting the truth. Moments later, Sarah rose from her seat beside Michael. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She held the microphone tightly, her voice breaking with emotion. "I need to say something too," she whispered. "Angela, I was wrong. We were all wrong. We accepted your kindness and treated you as if it didn't matter. We thought your silence meant weakness, but it was strength." Her words came in fragments, interrupted by tears. Guests watched in hushed stillness as Sarah wiped her cheeks and forced herself to continue. "You gave us more than we deserved, and we repaid you with disrespect. For that, I am truly sorry." Angela did not respond aloud. She didn't need to. Her eyes met Sarah's across the room, steady, composed, unflinching. That single look carried more weight than any speech could. The hall fell quiet, the sound of Sarah's sobs the only echo, and in that silence, every person present understood. Angela Carter was no longer invisible. She was the center. As the guests applauded Michael and Sarah's confessions, David sat slumped in his chair. His shoulders sagged, his eyes fixed on the floor. Not a single person looked to him for leadership. Not one voice defended him. For years he had relied on charm and control, spinning stories to keep his wife invisible. But tonight, those stories collapsed. Everyone saw the truth. He had stolen from Angela, silenced her, and humiliated her. Now he was silent, not with power, but with shame. Even his own family avoided his gaze. He was no longer the proud husband who claimed to keep the peace. He was the man who lost respect, lost credibility, lost everything that once propped him up. Angela did not spare him a glance. She no longer needed to. His downfall was complete, written not in her words but in the absence of his. The man who thought he could control her had been reduced to a figure no one followed. The morning light crept across the marble floor of the Carter estate. Angela moved quietly through the house, her steps steady, her face calm. In the driveway, her black Range Rover waited, packed with suitcases that held the few things she truly valued. 15 years of marriage fit neatly into the back of a single car. Photos, documents, clothes, just enough to carry forward. The rest she left behind, stripped of meaning now that the bond of trust was gone. David's voice called faintly from the kitchen, pleading, bargaining, but Angela did not turn back. She had looked back for 15 years, making excuses for a man who thrived on her silence. This time, she chose forward. She opened the garage door, sunlight spilling over her as she slid behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. Freedom hummed in the sound. With one last breath, she pulled away, leaving behind a house full of broken promises. She chose liberty over chains. 3 months later, the skyline of Atlanta gleamed with a new jewel, the headquarters of Carter Hospitality. Glass walls reflected the sun, towering over the city that had once underestimated her. Inside, Angela walked through the lobby as employees and partners rose to greet her. Industry leaders who had once overlooked her now extended their hands, eager to align with the woman who had redefined power in hospitality. The press called her the Queen of Hospitality. Magazines featured her story, not of scandal, but of triumph. They wrote of the black woman who turned betrayal into empire, who demanded respect in an industry that had dismissed her for years. Angela stood in her new office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta. Contracts lay on her desk, opportunities born not only from her business acumen, but from her refusal to remain silent when others tried to erase her. What had begun with humiliation ended with recognition. Angela Carter was no longer invisible. She was unstoppable. Months passed, and the ripple of Angela's stand continued to shape lives. Michael, humbled by what had happened, reached out with news. He and Sarah had started a scholarship fund for young hospitality students. "It's our way of honoring you," his letter said. "We want to give back because of what you taught us." Angela read the words with quiet acknowledgement. For him, there was growth. For once, someone in the family had turned shame into purpose. But David was different. His calls grew desperate, his messages filled with apologies that sounded less like love and more like fear. He had lost his marriage, his respect, and his influence. What remained was the hollow voice of a man clinging to what no longer existed. The contrast was sharp. Michael built something new. David clung to the past. The family, once united against her, now stood divided by the consequences of their choices. And through it all, Angela stayed steady, knowing justice had unfolded in its own time. Angela often reflected on the irony. For 15 years, her silence had been treated as weakness. She had been underestimated, overlooked, erased. But in truth, silence had been her discipline, her waiting, her patience. When she finally chose to act, that silence became her power. With a single decision, she had turned a wedding into a lesson, a family into witnesses, and an entire industry into believers. She did not shout, she did not fight for their approval. She simply revealed who she had always been, and the world adjusted. The Carter family now spoke of her with caution. Vendors spoke of her with reverence. Employees spoke of her with pride. Angela Carter, the black woman once dismissed as just a wife, was now known as the quiet force who could not be ignored. The silent empress had always existed. Now, everyone finally saw her. Angela Carter's journey was never just about a wedding. It was about a woman who gave everything, her time, her love, her money, only to be betrayed and erased. For 15 years, her silence was treated as weakness. They thought she would always accept less, that she would always remain in the background. But silence can hold power. And when Angela finally chose to stand, that power shook everything around her. A family that dismissed her had to bow their heads. An industry that overlooked her now calls her its queen. And a woman who was once underestimated walked away not as a victim, but as the one who held all the cards. Her story reminds us of something every woman should carry in her heart. Never underestimate the quiet strength inside you. Because when a woman decides she has had enough, when she finally rises, nothing can remain the same. If you felt Angela's story, if it spoke to the battles you've faced in your own life, share this video with someone who needs the reminder. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story of strength, justice, and resilience.
The windows at Crestline Estate didn't just shine, they sparkled. Monica Reed wiped her cloth across the final pane, then leaned back slightly, eyeing the line of perfect glass she'd just polished. None of it belonged to her. She tugged her uniform straight. It wasn't much, plain gray, fitted at the waist, practical for her daily routine of wiping counters she'd never eat from. Monica had gotten used to invisibility in this house. 3 months of moving like a shadow, barely noticed by the man who owned everything. Roman Dax. He was rarely seen, though his presence felt permanent, like a fingerprint on every surface. The staff talked in hushed tones about his icy temperament, how he fired a senior partner just for misplacing a decimal in a financial report. Monica had once caught a glimpse of him stepping out of a black SUV, phone glued to his ear, jaw set like carved stone. Cold, rich, ruthless. And now, footsteps. Monica tensed. Miss Reed. She turned quickly. The man himself stood just behind her, as if summoned by thought. Roman Dax was tall, commanding. Broad shoulders filled out a tailored black shirt that clung to his body like a second skin. A few buttons were left undone, exposing a sliver of defined chest. His storm-colored eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "Yes, Mr. Dax?" Her voice sounded more confident than she felt. He didn't smile. "I need a wife," he said flatly. Monica blinked. "I'm sorry." "A legal arrangement," he clarified. "Temporary. Maximum of 1 year." She stared at him, stunned. Was this a joke? But Roman didn't blink. His expression was absolute. "I don't understand." She started. "My public image requires softening for a business merger," he said. "You need financial help. Specifically, the medical debt your late mother left behind." Monica's breath caught. He knew. He knew about the hospital bills, the collectors, the eviction notice that had once found its way under her door. "You've been looking into me," she said, arms folding defensively. "I look into everyone who lives under my roof," he said calmly. "Consider this mutually beneficial. No strings, no emotions, just an agreement." Monica felt her spine straighten. "So you want a fake wife, like some corporate strategy?" "Exactly," he said. She laughed, bitterly. "That's not in the job description. I'm rewriting the job description. And you assume I want to be a mother?" She shot back, voice tight. "I'm not offering a child," he replied. "I'm offering security." Her mind swirled. This man had just thrown her entire life into a blender, then offered her the button to press. Her pride warred with practicality. Her gut screamed to run. But there was a flicker beneath the noise, something unspoken. Not quite attraction, not yet. Curiosity. And risk. "So, what happens if I say yes?" she asked slowly. "You move in. We sign a legal agreement. We play the part. No intimacy?" She challenged. "No expectations." She tilted her head. "Then I get to break your rules." Roman's eyes narrowed. "You'd try?" Monica gave a half smile. "Try me." And just like that, the contract neither of them understood had begun. "Hello, my beloved family. This is Dr. Phillips, and we're just getting started. If you're new here, do us a small favor. Hit that like button. It helps YouTube share these stories with more amazing people like you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join the family. And now, let's begin." Monica folded the cleaning rag over one wrist like a badge of defiance. "Let me get this straight. You're asking me to marry you because your reputation needs polishing?" Roman didn't flinch. "Correct," she huffed. "And in return, I get a check, a direct transfer to your account, tax-free, every month, like a salary." Her tone dripped with disbelief. "Like a partnership. You don't even know me." Roman stepped forward, his steps calculated, deliberate. "I know enough." She tensed as he closed the space between them. His voice dipped, calm, unshaken. "You're discreet, intelligent. You follow orders. You've kept to yourself despite being surrounded by wealth. You've never tried to get my attention." She swallowed hard. "Most people in this house pretend not to see me," she said, chin tilted. "You're different. You actually prefer being invisible." Roman's mouth twitched, barely noticeable. Visibility complicates things. And marriage doesn't? Monica scoffed. He took another step closer. The board is watching. Investors are cautious. The press is hunting for signs of softness. I don't have time to date. I need a story, one the media will buy. And I'm the love interest? No. You're the stabilizer. A woman with credibility. Empathy. Warmth. He paused. Things I lack. She raised an eyebrow. So you admit it. You're cold. I'm honest, he countered. That's why this can work. Monica folded her arms. And if I refuse, I'll understand. He nodded. But I'll also assume you're willing to gamble with your mother's debt for the sake of pride. Her breath hitched. The room felt smaller now, though it hadn't moved. She looked past him at the estate's curated walls, the quiet opulence of a life she'd only ever cleaned around. It wasn't about the money. It was about dignity, and maybe, just maybe, curiosity. What's the fine print? She asked, voice even. Roman turned, walking toward the desk near the hall. He pulled open a drawer and handed her a folder. Inside was a contract, typed, signed, dated. A marriage license, non-disclosure clause, financial terms, timelines. And here I thought you were joking, she murmured. I never joke. She flipped to the last page. Her name was already typed in. He'd prepared this. How do I know you won't change the rules midway? She asked, eyes narrowing. I don't improvise, he said. Everything's calculated. Well, here's my calculation, Monica said, shutting the folder. If I do this, I get full freedom inside the house, no schedules, no curfews. I cook what I want. I play music. I live. Roman paused. His expression didn't shift much, but his silence said he was considering it. Fine, he said finally. You live how you want. But in public, we play the part. She extended her hand. Then let's make it official. He stared at her hand for a beat longer than expected. Then he shook it. And something in that handshake, brief, firm, charged, shifted. You'll have new clothes delivered tomorrow, Roman said. Will they come with instructions? No, but the house manual does. She laughed, short and amused. Let me guess, color-coded tabs and penalties for disobedience? Rule number 1, no sarcasm before 9 a.m. Monica tilted her head. You're serious, aren't you? Always. Then buckle up, Mr. Dax, she said, walking past him, folder in hand. You just hired a tornado in heels. She didn't see it, but behind her, Roman's lips lifted, just slightly. It was the closest thing he'd had to a smile in months. Monica sat on the edge of the marble bathtub, the contract folder open beside her. The Crestline guest suite looked like a magazine spread, ornate fixtures, candles no one lit, and towels folded into animal shapes. But it didn't feel like hers. Not yet. She reread the clause that defined their domestic partnership. Everything had a line. Everything had terms. Breakfast protocols, joint appearances, legal responsibilities. She exhaled through her nose and muttered, This man really is trying to choreograph marriage like a press release. A knock on the door pulled her thoughts back to reality. Roman didn't wait for a response. He never did. He stepped inside, holding a sleek black box. For you, he said, placing it on the vanity. Tomorrow's event requires formal wear. Monica narrowed her eyes. You bought me clothes? You're my wife. Temporarily. You're expected to look the part. She opened the box. A deep emerald gown shimmered inside, elegant and minimal, like something pulled straight from a red carpet. No price tag? She asked, lifting the fabric. It's yours. I'm not a doll, she said flatly. I'm not treating you like one. You're controlling everything. Roman took a breath, voice low. Would you rather I let the press rip you apart? They'll ask questions. They'll dig. We need to be unified. She stood, arms crossed. Unified doesn't mean submissive. I never said it did. You're used to women obeying. I'm used to efficiency. Well, newsflash, she said, stepping into his space. I'm not efficient. I'm messy. I laugh too loud. I burn toast. And I will not let you turn me into another one of your boardroom assets. Roman's eyes held hers. You agreed to the contract. I agreed to partnership, not puppetry. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he nodded once. Fine. But remember, we're in this together. Every misstep affects both of us. Monica moved to the box, pulling the dress out fully. It was stunning. and suffocating. "I'll wear your dress," she said, "but I'm not going to smile on cue. No one's asking you to fake happiness." "I don't fake anything." She turned to him, the fabric now draped over her arm like a banner. "If you want a lie that looks like love, pick someone else." Roman's jaw tensed, but his voice stayed calm. "I don't want love. I want results." "Then buckle up," she shot back, "because real women don't come with guarantees." She walked past him again, same as before, but this time, he didn't just watch. He followed her. The next morning, Monica stepped out of the guest suite dressed in the emerald gown. It hugged her frame with quiet power, modest in cut but impossible to ignore. She had tied her curls into a soft bun, small gold hoops glinting at her ears. Roman stood in the grand foyer, phone to his ear, voice low and clipped. He ended the call the moment he saw her. His eyes scanned her slowly, not with desire, but with scrutiny, evaluation, as if she were another quarterly report. "Turn," he said. She didn't move. "I'm not auditioning." Roman blinked once. "You look fine." "Fine?" she asked with mock offense. "I look like money." That was the goal. Next time say, "stunning," and save yourself a lawsuit. His lips pressed into something that might have been a smile. A sleek car waited outside. As the driver opened the door, Monica turned to Roman. "So, where are we going, husband?" He slid in beside her. "Gala, investors, media. You'll stay near me at all times. Say as little as possible, unless prompted." She raised a brow. "You really think you can manage me like an agenda? I manage billion-dollar assets. You're manageable. Keep talking like that, and I'll start asking for hazard pay." The car pulled away from the estate. Inside, silence wrapped around them, heavy with unspoken tension. Monica glanced out the window, but her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress. Roman noticed. "You nervous?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "I'm fine. You're tugging your dress." She let go immediately. "It's instinct. My mom always said stillness is a lie. If you're not moving, you're holding something in." Roman studied her. "You talk about her a lot. She was everything. Do you miss her?" Monica turned her head. "Every day." He didn't reply, but something in his posture softened. Barely. At the gala, cameras flashed as they exited the vehicle. Roman's hand slid to her lower back, firm and possessive. Monica played along, forcing a smile as lights burst in their faces. Inside the ballroom, she spotted industry titans, starched politicians, and women with eyes sharp enough to cut marble. Roman leaned in. "Stay close. Relax," she said sweetly. "I know how to fake affection." She slipped her hand into the crook of his arm, smiling for the next camera. Roman didn't flinch, but he didn't let go either. Later, during a toast, Roman whispered near her ear, "You handled that well. You sound surprised. Most people crumble in these circles." "I grew up around sharks," she murmured back. "Yours just wear tuxedos." As the night wore on, Monica danced with a few board members while Roman kept a watchful eye. When she returned to his side, cheeks flushed, he whispered, "You broke 2 rules." "I smiled too much?" "You drank champagne." "I had 1 glass." "That's enough to raise questions. You're supposed to be careful." She squared her shoulders. "You brought me here as your wife, not your employee. If I have to pretend, I get to improvise." He stared at her, then said, "Fair." Back in the car, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was charged. Respect had been earned. Lines had been redrawn. And the game had officially begun. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing Roman Dax's private penthouse. Monica stepped out first, heels clicking against gleaming marble. The space was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows, glass partitions, minimalist furniture in muted tones. Everything looked expensive, untouched, and sterile. It didn't feel like a home, more like a showroom. "Wow," she muttered under her breath. "Do you sleep here or just pose for Forbes covers?" Roman walked past her, setting his keys in a tray by the door. "It's efficient." "It's a hospital with throw pillows," she replied, spinning in a slow circle. "Where's the soul?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a sleek black binder labeled House Manual. "You're joking," she said, flipping it open. Page 5. "Rules begin there." "You actually wrote rules?" They maintained structure. She scanned the list, eyebrows climbing higher with each line. No music above 55 decibels after 8 p.m., no candles in bedrooms, no outside guests unless pre-approved. All personal items must be confined to designated quarters. She looked up. Are you running a marriage or a military base? Roman didn't respond. He simply removed his jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt beneath. He moved through the living room with sharp precision, opening cabinets, checking his phone, unfazed. Monica smirked. Do I need permission to breathe after midnight? Don't be dramatic. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. That wasn't in the manual either. He turned to her, voice calm. You agreed to the contract. This is how I live. Well, she said, tossing the binder onto a side table. Get ready to live differently. Roman raised a brow. You plan to test boundaries? No, she replied with a grin. I plan to erase them. Later, Monica wandered into her assigned bedroom, larger than her entire apartment back in Oakland. The bed was king-sized, layered in white linens that didn't even wrinkle. A closet stood open, filled with designer clothes already tailored to her size. She stared for a moment, then reached out and brushed her fingers over a silk blouse. No more uniforms, no more scrubbing tile. She turned, and for the first time since signing that paper, the reality sank in. She lived here now. With him, in this fortress of rules and silence. She sat on the bed's edge and whispered to herself, what did I just sign up for? As if on cue, a gentle knock came at the door. Roman entered, holding a set of keys. For your car, he said, placing them on the dresser. I don't have a license, she replied. He paused, then considerate motivation. She stared at him. You keep giving me things, but you don't actually give anything. He didn't respond, just nodded once, and left. As the door clicked shut behind him, Monica laid back on the bed, arms stretched wide, eyes on the ceiling. She had won the argument, but somehow, she still felt like the one being handled. Monica didn't ease into her new environment. She stormed in like a hurricane. The next evening, Roman sat in his study reviewing merger documents when a thunderous bass line thudded through the penthouse. He paused, pen in midair. The unmistakable sound of Erykah Badu's voice carried through the walls, layered over the sizzle of something frying in a pan. He stood slowly. In the kitchen, Monica danced barefoot in a faded Prince t-shirt and leggings, twirling a wooden spoon in one hand while stirring marinara with the other. Her hips moved to the beat as she sang off-key but unapologetically. Roman appeared at the threshold. She noticed him, but didn't stop. Is it after 8? She called over the music. It's exactly 8:04. Perfect, she said, twirling again. I like to make an entrance. The volume is freeing, she finished, pulling open the fridge. You should try it. He stepped forward. There are rules. She held out a sauce-stained spoon. Here, taste. Roman hesitated. Afraid of a little sweetness, Mr. Dax? He took the spoon, lips brushing the edge. He chewed, slowly, expression unreadable. It's too sweet, he said. Monica grinned. You say that like you taste feelings. I don't. She arched a brow. Then why do you keep watching me? He said nothing. Monica leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You thought you'd marry someone who would blend into your furniture. Surprise, I talk, I sing. I use real garlic. And sometimes, she added, twirling the spoon like a wand, I wear purple and eat pasta at 10. Roman folded his arms. You're exhausting. Correction, she replied. I'm alive. He walked away. She turned the music down just slightly, then followed him. Tell me something, she said, hopping onto the bar stool by the kitchen island. What did you expect this to feel like? Silence and mutual boredom? Roman looked at her. Really looked. I expected efficiency. Well, she said, swirling the pasta again. I'm not a spreadsheet. He exhaled. A single, quiet breath. Monica caught it. You're not used to someone pushing back, are you? I'm not used to chaos. Chaos is how you find out what matters. Their eyes locked. For a second, neither moved. Then Roman stepped forward and slid a folded blanket onto the stool next to her. For your naps, he said. She blinked. I didn't say I nap. You will. Eventually. She smirked. That a threat? An observation. The pasta boiled over behind her. Monica cursed, rushed back to the stove, and turned the heat down. Roman stood there, arms crossed, amused despite himself. "Careful," he said, voice lower now. "You're becoming predictable." She tossed him a smile over her shoulder. "Don't worry, I'm full of surprises." He left her then, but not before dropping a folded note on the kitchen counter. She opened it once he was gone. "You snored." "Exception granted." Monica stared at the words, lips twitching. The game had changed. He was bending, and she was just getting started. The following week brought more storms, not the kind outside, but the kind that crackled between shared spaces, subtle glances, and unspoken shifts. Roman tried to stick to his routine. Early mornings, intense calls, zero distractions, but Monica was proving to be one. She never followed the same schedule twice. Sometimes she cooked breakfast in silk robes and fuzzy socks. Other days she read in the living room with jazz playing loud enough to disturb the silence he once craved. Yet it wasn't just her disobedience. It was the way she smiled while doing it, the way she hummed without realizing, the way her presence filled the hollow spaces he'd stopped noticing. That Tuesday, Monica found a bottle of ginger-laced orange juice in the fridge. Not the generic kind, but her favorite brand. Imported. Uncommon. She blinked at the label. He'd noticed. Later that evening, while folding laundry on the couch, she spotted a small lamp lit in the hallway. The one near her room, Roman had left it on. Just enough glow to make late-night water trips less jarring. She smiled without meaning to. He noticed too. The next morning, she made coffee just the way he liked it, black, strong, no sugar. She didn't say anything, just left it on his desk and walked out. Roman stared at the mug for a long time before taking a sip. That night, she walked into his office holding a white plate. Cookies, burned on the edges, misshapen in size but warm. "Robot," she said, placing the plate on his desk. "Let's test if your circuits can handle sugar." Roman looked up. "I don't eat sweets. You don't do a lot of things." "Try it." He picked up the smallest one, took a bite, chewed, then grimaced slightly. "Unacceptable," he said. Monica laughed. "Oh, come on. It's not that bad. You use salt instead of sugar." "I did not." "You did." She snatched one, bit into it, and paused. "Okay, maybe I did." He looked at her. "What were you distracted by?" She leaned against the doorframe. "Memories." He tilted his head. "Of Christmas mornings. Mom used to burn cookies every year. We still ate them." She smiled faintly. "Even when they tasted like drywall." Roman studied her for a long beat. "You miss her." "Always." The room grew quiet. He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't recite cliches. Instead, he picked up another cookie and bit it again, salt and all. "Still awful," he said flatly. She threw a cushion at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor, and for the first time, Roman didn't correct her behavior. He leaned back in his chair, watching her with something softer in his eyes. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked. "All what?" "Bringing cookies, leaving coffee, dancing in my kitchen." Monica walked toward him slowly. "Because I live here now, and homes should feel alive. This isn't a home." "Then why do you stock my favorite juice?" He said nothing. "Why leave the light on outside my door?" She pressed. Still nothing. She reached the desk and leaned over slightly, voice quiet now. "You don't have to pretend with me." Roman looked up at her. "That's the problem," he said. "What is?" "You make me forget I'm pretending." The air shifted. It wasn't romantic yet, but it wasn't platonic either. They stood on the edge of something dangerous, and neither of them moved. That night, as Monica settled into bed, she found a fresh pair of slippers at the foot of it. They were her size, soft and pink. No notes this time, but the message was clear. He was watching. He was listening. And beneath the surface of the contract, something else was beginning to form. "Hello, my beautiful and amazing family. If you're still here with me, still watching, don't go just yet. Take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe because this story is only just beginning. Now, let's keep going." Monica stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest bedroom, adjusting the neckline of her cardigan. Her bump hadn't arrived yet. There was still time, but everything about her reflection felt different lately. She saw confidence. A woman adapting to a life that once seemed impossible. Down the hall, Roman sat at the breakfast counter, reading the news on his tablet with his usual intense focus. Monica walked in humming softly, barefoot as always, and poured herself a cup of coffee. "You sleep?" she asked casually. "Not much." She slid onto the stool beside him, taking a long sip. "You really need to try therapy." "I don't need therapy. You're a rich man with control issues and a collection of emotional landmines." "Yeah, you do." He didn't even glance up. "I've got you. Close enough." She laughed into her mug, then added, "Keep talking like that, and I might start charging you per hour." Roman finally looked at her. Not a smirk, not a glare. Just looked and lingered. Monica caught it. "You stare a lot," she said. "You do a lot of things worth staring at." She paused. "You sure you don't eat sugar? Because that line was sweet." Roman returned to his tablet, but the corner of his mouth twitched. That evening she danced again, this time in the kitchen to a mellow groove track. There was no pasta bubbling, no apron flapping, just her in sweats, spinning a wooden spoon absent-mindedly as she chopped vegetables. Roman walked in, phone to his ear, and paused mid-sentence. He watched as she twirled, just once, before she saw him. "You're always creeping up on me," she said, not missing a beat. "Not creeping," he replied, ending the call. "Studying." She tilted her head. "What do you see?" "A woman who doesn't belong in a box." She blinked. "That sounds dangerously close to a compliment. Don't let it go to your head." Too late. Later that night, Roman returned to his study, only to find the hallway near Monica's room softly lit again. The slippers he'd bought her had been replaced with a small potted cactus, topped with a sticky note. "For you. Try not to kill it." He chuckled. The next morning, she found that same cactus sitting on the kitchen counter, now wearing a tiny red bow. Monica stared at it, then laughed out loud. He wasn't just observing her. He was engaging. Without saying it out loud, Roman had begun to speak her language, not through grand gestures, but in the way he noticed, in the way he remembered. Monica knocked lightly on Roman's office door, balancing a chipped white plate in her hands. "Robot," she called, pushing the door open before he answered. "I come bearing offerings." Roman looked up from his laptop, brows lifting. "Offerings?" She stepped inside, placing the plate on his desk. Cookies, slightly overbaked, not poisoned. He closed the laptop halfway and peered at the plate. "Why?" "Because I figured if we're going to pretend to be married, I should start feeding you disappointing desserts. It's tradition." Roman picked up one cookie and examined it like a contract clause. "They're uneven. I'm not Betty Crocker." He took a bite, chewed slowly, and winced. Monica folded her arms. "That bad? You used baking soda instead of powder." "Damn," she muttered. "I knew one of them had a cap." He placed the rest of the cookie down with surgical precision. Undeniably flawed. She flopped into the chair across from him. "You know, it wouldn't kill you to lie once in a while." "It might." Monica leaned forward. "Tell me, do you ever lighten up?" "I don't have the luxury. You're one of the wealthiest men in the country, which is exactly why I don't." She shook her head. "Money can't fix everything. It fixes most things. You sound like someone who's never laughed until they cried." "I haven't. Or danced like nobody was watching. No. Or eaten a cookie just because it reminded you of someone." Roman paused. "Just briefly, what if I don't want reminders?" Monica's voice softened. "Then maybe you're not as bulletproof as you think." He looked at her, really looked at her this time. Not with judgment, not with calculation, but with something else, something searching. "You think I'm cold," he said. "I think you're frozen," she replied. "But underneath it, there's probably a man who used to believe in something." He didn't answer. She stood and gathered the plate. "Don't worry. Next time I'll burn them evenly." He caught her wrist before she turned. She froze. Roman held her gaze, thumb brushing lightly against her skin. "Why do you keep trying?" "Because I think you want someone to try." The air between them thinned. His grip loosened, but his eyes didn't move from hers. "What if I said I don't want training?" She smiled faintly. "Then why do you keep showing up for class?" Neither of them moved. Neither spoke. But something had shifted, and they both felt it. That weekend, rain tapped steadily against the penthouse windows. The city below blurred into streaks of silver as storm clouds hovered low. Monica sat cross-legged on the floor of the living room, surrounded by paperwork and colorful highlighters. She was studying a child development course, one she'd started online months before, but it quietly paused when the job at Crestline began. Roman entered the room carrying his tablet, but paused when he saw her. "What's all this?" he asked, motioning to the floor chaos. "Class notes," she said without looking up. "I've been trying to get my teaching certification. You want to be a teacher?" She nodded. "I was studying early childhood education before my mom got sick. Everything stopped after that." He glanced at the papers. "And now, I'm catching up. You might be a robot, but some of us still believe in messy dreams." He stepped closer, scanning a handwritten flashcard. "These are handwritten. Shocking, I know. I believe in ink." He crouched beside her, picking up a sheet. "You color code your stress levels? The brighter the color, the harder it is to memorize." Roman tilted his head. "You're methodical." Underneath the chaos, she said, "There's a system." He looked at her then, longer than usual. "What made you want to teach?" Monica smiled, small and honest. "Because I never had one who looked like me. And because I want to give kids what I didn't get: patience, encouragement, safety." Roman's gaze didn't leave her. She shifted under his stare. "What? Don't analyze me." "I'm not." "You're absolutely analyzing me." "I'm observing," he said. "There's a difference?" "I don't judge. I assess." "Well, here's your assessment," she said, tapping his knee with a pen. "You're dangerously close to being human." He didn't reply, just sat there, watching her. Eventually, he said, "I can arrange for a private tutor, or more time off, if you want to study." She blinked. "You'd do that? You're not my maid anymore." "And what am I now?" Roman looked down at the scattered papers. "Something I didn't expect." Monica's chest fluttered, but she pushed the feeling away. Instead, she slid one of the flashcards toward him. "Here, let's see if you're teachable." He took it, read the question, and got it wrong. Twice. She laughed. "Okay, you're not hopeless. But we've got work to do." They sat together, side by side on the floor, Monica guiding him through basic concepts, while Roman awkwardly repeated terminology like a man trying to learn empathy from a textbook. She poked fun. He tolerated it. They talked more than they had in weeks, and for the first time, the contract didn't hang between them like a wall. Hours passed. The rain softened. The apartment grew warmer. At one point she yawned mid-sentence, and Roman instinctively handed her a folded blanket from the couch. She paused. "You're getting really good at that." "At what?" "Catching things I don't say." Roman didn't answer, but his eyes said enough. They were no longer just cohabitants, no longer actors. This was something else, something unspoken, something real. Monica stood in front of the full-length mirror, smoothing the sleeves of a navy blue blouse Roman had personally selected. The adoption agency interview was in an hour, and despite her calm exterior, her insides twisted into anxious knots. She practiced a polite smile, then dropped it. Fake. Too fake. The truth was, no matter how confident she acted, this meeting felt like stepping onto a stage with no script. She wasn't used to being evaluated, especially not like this. "You look tense." Roman's voice drifted in from the hallway. She turned slightly and saw him leaning against the doorframe, arms folded, watching her. "I'm not tense," she lied. "Your shoe is on the wrong foot," he pointed out. She looked down. Damn. Left foot was wearing the right heel. She groaned and sat on the bed to fix it. He stepped inside and handed her a folded document. "Here's the file from the agency. I've highlighted key points." She scanned it quickly. His notes were immaculate. Color-coded tabs, concise bullet summaries. He had annotated her life like it was a quarterly report. "You really don't do anything halfway," she said. "This isn't just for show. They want proof of stability. I haven't even decided if I like kids. They don't need to know that." She gave him a look. "Remind me again why we're doing this." "Because this agency has ties to the investors we're courting. Approval from them helps our image, and it makes the marriage narrative credible. And if I mess up, you won't. You sound so sure. You don't pretend well. Which means if they believe you, it's because it's real." Monica stared at him. Something in his voice hadn't sounded rehearsed. "Roman," she said quietly, "do you want a child?" He hesitated, just for a beat. "I want control over the narrative." "That's not a yes." He stepped closer. "It's not a no either." She wasn't sure what to make of that. He straightened the collar of her blouse and met her eyes. "Just be yourself. Let me handle the rest." I thought you didn't improvise. Today, I'll make an exception." Monica gave him a long look, then nodded. As they walked toward the elevator, she glanced up at him. "Don't hold my hand unless I squeeze yours first." Roman gave a rare half-smile. Duly noted. And with that, the elevator doors slid open, carrying them down, not just to an interview, but toward a moment that would blur the line between pretending and becoming. The office of the Crestview Family Foundation was a far cry from Roman's glass and steel empire. The lobby smelled like cinnamon and safety. Worn bookshelves lined the walls, and finger paintings hung proudly behind the front desk. Monica gripped her tote bag tightly as a soft-spoken receptionist led them toward the interview room. Roman walked beside her, calm as ever. Impeccably dressed, impeccably unreadable. She hated how steady he was. Inside the meeting room, two women sat at a round wooden table. One wore glasses and a kind smile. The other had a tablet in her lap and a clipboard in her hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Dax," the woman with glasses said. "I'm Sandra. This is my colleague Claire. We just want to get to know you both a little before the board reviews your application." Monica opened her mouth to speak, but her voice snagged in her throat. She froze. Her legs were fine, her posture was straight, her outfit perfect. But her brain? Blank. Sandra noticed the tension. "Would you like some tea, Mrs. Dax?" Monica blinked. Yes, please." Before the mug arrived, Roman's hand reached beneath the table and gently wrapped around hers. He didn't look at her, didn't speak. But his hand stayed, firm, steady, real. Monica's fingers curled into his, surprised by the warmth and the unspoken message. "I've got you." Claire began with a few standard questions about routines, long-term goals, and family vision. Roman answered each one with ease. He even made a few small jokes, surprising everyone, including Monica. "He's funny," she blurted once, startled. Sandra chuckled. "Is that rare?" Monica turned to Roman, who looked amused. "Extremely," she said. "He's usually allergic to smiling." Roman smirked. "She's not wrong." Claire looked between them. "Tell us how you two met." Monica's heart skipped. This was it. The moment the story had to sound like love, not business. She opened her mouth, but Roman beat her to it. "I met her in my own home," he said. "She was polishing the windows." Monica blinked. "I noticed she didn't try to impress anyone. She did her work. She didn't seek praise. She didn't ask for anything." Sandra leaned forward, intrigued. Roman continued. "I realized. That's the kind of person who deserves everything." Monica's breath hitched. "That's not in the script," she whispered. Roman squeezed her hand under the table. "It's not a script." Claire tilted her head. "And what does she bring to your life, Mr. Dax?" Roman didn't hesitate. "She makes me laugh. She makes this place, this world feel like home." Monica couldn't look at him. Not now. Her throat tightened. Sandra looked at her gently. "And you, Mrs. Dax? What does Roman bring to your life?" Monica forced her eyes forward, blinking fast. "He listens. Even when I don't say things out loud, he hears them." Roman looked at her then, and something cracked between them, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, but sacred. The interview wrapped a few minutes later. They walked out into the crisp afternoon air without speaking. They reached the car. Roman opened the door for her. Monica slid in, staring straight ahead. Halfway through the ride, she finally asked, "Was any of that real?" He looked over. "Which part?" "The things you said." Roman reached over, threading his fingers through hers again. "I don't lie when it matters," he said. Rain started halfway home. Monica stared out the window of the car as the wipers moved in slow rhythm, brushing away droplets that blurred the city lights. The silence between her and Roman felt different now, thicker somehow, not hostile but charged. The interview hadn't gone as expected. It had gone better. Too well. Roman hadn't just played the role. He'd owned it. He'd held her hand like it was second nature, spoken about her as if he believed it, as if she was more than a placeholder in his master plan. "You were good in there," she said softly, still looking at the window. "So were you." She folded her arms. "You meant what you said?" "I wouldn't have said it otherwise." Her voice dropped. "You said I made you laugh, that I made the place feel like home." "I did." She turned to him slowly. "Then why did you sound like a stranger when we left the room?" Roman met her gaze. "Because I didn't expect to feel any of it." Monica looked away again, pulse quickening. Her voice came out hoarse. This wasn't supposed to be real. I know. You said no feelings. I remember. And yet, I know. The car stopped at a red light. Outside, pedestrians hurried under umbrellas, their reflections scattered in puddles. Monica's chest tightened. She swallowed hard and whispered, "So what now?" Roman leaned back, eyes forward. "We keep going." "As what?" His jaw worked slightly. "That depends on you." The light turned green. They rode the rest of the way in silence. Back at the penthouse, Monica didn't wait for Roman to open her door. She walked ahead, removed her heels at the entrance, and made her way to the guest suite. But she didn't go inside. She turned and waited. Seconds later, Roman came around the corner. They stood a few feet apart, the rain still tapping against the windows behind them. Monica took a slow breath. "When you said those things, it felt like more than strategy." Roman didn't blink, because it was... She moved one step closer. "Then say it again." He hesitated. She raised her chin. "Say it." Roman stepped toward her, voice low and deliberate. "You made me laugh when I forgot how. You made silence feel like comfort. You made a life I controlled feel like a life I could live." Her throat tightened. "And you," he added, reaching for her hand, "are the only part of this arrangement that never felt like a performance." Monica's eyes burned. "Roman." He brushed her knuckles with his thumb. "I don't know what this is becoming, but I'm not afraid to find out." She stepped closer. So did he. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But something deeper passed between them, an unspoken understanding, raw and honest. Monica whispered, "Maybe we're both learning how to stop pretending." Roman nodded, and for the first time they stood not as employer and employee, not as husband and wife by contract, but as two people on the verge of something real. Camping. Monica blinked at the email on Roman's phone. "You seriously agreed to a retreat in the woods?" "It's mandatory," Roman replied, not looking up from his packing. "Agency policy. They want to observe couples bonding in real-life environments." She squinted at him. "What kind of executive CEO agrees to make s'mores in the dirt?" "One who wants their signature approved," he replied coolly, zipping up a sleek black duffel bag. Monica crossed her arms. "Let me guess. You're bringing a suit to the forest?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "I packed 2." She groaned. "This is going to be a disaster." They arrived at the drop-off point just after noon. A narrow gravel road led into a lush wooded preserve, green and thick with the scent of pine. A cabin waited at the end of the trail, small, wooden, no visible Wi-Fi. Monica stared at it like it had personally insulted her. "This is your idea of bonding?" she asked as they stepped out of the SUV. Roman surveyed the structure with the wariness of a man looking at something both unfamiliar and unsanitary. "It's a structure. It has a roof. It qualifies." A gentle breeze stirred the trees as a coordinator approached, clipboard in hand. "You two must be the Daxes. Welcome. Cell reception here is spotty, but that's part of the charm." Monica smiled through gritted teeth. "Oh, we're charmed." Roman remained stone-faced. Inside, the cabin was rustic. 2 rooms, 1 narrow bed, a fireplace that looked like it hadn't been used in years, and a kitchen Monica wouldn't trust to boil water. "Well," she muttered, tossing her bag on a rickety chair, "so much for luxury." Roman removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "We'll survive. You always make it sound like we're going to war." He glanced around. "This isn't far off." Later that evening, the sky darkened faster than expected. Thunder rumbled low in the distance, followed by the sharp crack of lightning. Monica stood by the window, arms crossed. "Tell me again why we didn't bring an umbrella." "It wasn't in the packing checklist. Because romance is obviously your strong suit." A sudden downpour slammed against the windows, and the power flickered once, then cut completely. Darkness. Monica let out a slow breath. "Perfect." Roman grabbed a flashlight from his duffel. "There's a fireplace." She raised an eyebrow. "You know how to light one?" "I've read manuals." "That's not encouraging." As he fumbled with the wood and matches, smoke curled from the hearth, not in a charming way. Monica coughed, fanning the air. "You're choking me out," she said, laughing despite herself. "I'm adjusting the airflow." "You're guessing." Technically. The fire sputtered, coughed, and eventually gave in to its own failure. Monica pulled her sweater tighter and dropped onto the cabin's only couch. Well, that was romantic. Roman looked at her, exasperated. You could try helping. I am helping, she said, smiling. I'm keeping morale up. He stared for a second too long, then sat beside her. Not close, but not distant either. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something else began to stir. Not lightning, not fire, but warmth. Between two people who weren't supposed to feel it. The cabin had gone quiet, except for the steady drumming of rain on the roof. Monica sat on the couch, wrapped in a thin throw blanket, her curls slightly damp from when she dashed out earlier to retrieve bottled water from the porch cooler. Roman stood by the dead fireplace, sleeves rolled up, soot smudging the inside of one wrist. The fire had officially failed. His pride was only mildly bruised. You know, Monica teased, I always imagined the big bad CEO could at least handle kindling. I excel at mergers, he replied dryly. Not camping theatrics. She laughed, hugging the blanket closer. Well, you get points for trying. -5 for the smoke bomb. Roman turned, arms folded. Are you cold? She looked at him. I'm fine. He crossed the room and shrugged off his coat, placing it gently over her shoulders. She blinked. Thanks. He sat down beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound came from the storm outside, wind pressing against the cabin walls, thunder rolling far in the distance. Monica leaned her head back. My mom used to love this kind of weather. Roman glanced at her. She'd light candles and read the same book over and over. Always said storms made the house feel alive. He stayed quiet, listening. She said thunder was just the sky's way of reminding you it still had a voice. Roman watched her carefully. Do you miss her most when it's quiet? Monica nodded slowly. Yeah. The quiet makes it harder to ignore what's missing. He looked down at his hands. I never knew my mother. She turned toward him, surprised. She left when I was a baby, he said. I don't remember her face, only stories. My father never forgave her for leaving. I grew up learning silence before I ever learned comfort. Monica's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Maybe that's why you control everything, she said gently. Maybe that's why I break your rules. He looked at her again, eyes steady. Because you want to ruin me? No, she said, voice softer. Because I want to see if you're real. The air thickened. Not with smoke this time, but something heavier, something warmer. Roman shifted, just slightly, turning toward her. You've been in my life less than a season, and somehow everything feels different. She swallowed hard. You don't even like change. That's the part that scares me. He reached up, brushing a damp curl from her cheek. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into the touch. I'm not good at this, Roman said quietly. But I want you. Monica's breath hitched. Then she closed the space between them. Their lips met, slow at first, unsure. Then deeper, urgent. Years of silence and Roman's soul shattered under the weight of her kiss. She tugged him closer. He responded with both hands, pulling her against him like he'd been waiting for this exact moment since the first day she smirked at him in defiance. Clothes peeled away, not clumsily, but deliberately. Roman laid her down on the couch, tracing her curves with reverence. She gasped his name as his lips moved lower, his mouth finding every place she hadn't realized was starved for attention. Her fingers threaded through his hair. You don't have to be perfect, she whispered, arching into him. Just be real. I am, he murmured against her skin. With you, I am. They made love like the storm had seeped into their skin, raw, electric, and unfiltered. No rules, no contracts, only heat and honesty. And in that small wooden cabin, two people who had spent their lives mastering distance finally collapsed into closeness. Not as strangers, not as actors, but as something brand new. Monica's skin was warm beneath Roman's hands, soft, responsive, and alive in a way he hadn't known he could crave. Every inch of her welcomed him, like her body had been waiting for his touch all along. The fire may have failed to spark earlier, but this was the real ignition. She lay beneath him on the couch, her back arched, eyes fluttering open only when he paused to study her face. You're staring again, she whispered, lips swollen, breath short. I don't want to miss anything, he murmured, brushing a thumb across her bottom lip. His mouth followed the curve of her collarbone, lingering in the hollow just above her heart. He kissed her there, once slow, Then again, lower this time, between the valley of her breasts, his breath catching at the sound she made. A soft gasp. Not because of surprise, but because she wanted more. Roman's hands moved down her body, exploring her with reverence, not like something to own, but like something to worship. Her waist, her hips, the softness of her thighs, each part of her felt like a revelation. Monica ran her fingers through his hair, guiding him where she needed him most. "Roman," she breathed, her voice cracking under the weight of longing. "Don't stop." "I wasn't planning to." He kissed a path down her stomach, slow and deliberate, pausing just above her navel. The storm outside raged, but inside the cabin the only thunder was the sound of her pulse, quickening under his tongue. He reached the inside of her thigh, kissed it gently, then again, closer now. She trembled. And then, his mouth found her, soft, hot pressure that sent her body arching off the couch. His tongue moved slowly at first, savoring every reaction, learning her rhythm. She cried out, hips pressing toward him, but he held her still with strong hands. Roman moved like a man who had never wanted anything until now, and was determined to master every second of it. Monica whimpered, clutching the blanket beneath her as the heat between her legs built to something unbearable. Then, release. Her body shattered beneath him, thighs trembling as his name tumbled from her lips in broken pieces. Roman, oh my God, Roman. He rose slowly, his mouth glistening, eyes locked on hers. She reached for him, desperate now, her body greedy with need. "Come here," she whispered. He didn't hesitate. Climbing over her, Roman kissed her with the taste of her still on his tongue. She moaned into his mouth, her legs wrapping around his waist as his body settled over hers. "I want to feel you," she whispered. "You will." He slid inside her slowly, inch by inch, watching every reaction flicker across her face. She gasped, her head falling back, fingers clawing into his shoulders. "God," she moaned. "Not quite," he said hoarsely, pressing deeper. "But I'll take the compliment." They moved together, slow at first, an intimate rhythm built on heat and trust. Every thrust felt like an answer to a question neither of them had known how to ask. Monica clung to him, hips rising to meet his, her moans growing louder as the pressure built again. Roman buried his face in her neck, his breath ragged. "You feel like fire," he groaned. "I can't get enough of you." She held his face, guiding his eyes to hers. "Then take all of me." And he did. Their bodies collided in waves, faster now, the couch creaking under their rhythm as the storm outside surged. Their cries blended with the wind and rain, a raw symphony of need and surrender. When they climaxed, it wasn't just physical, it was something else, something deeper. They shattered together, sweat-slicked, breathless, tangled. He collapsed beside her, pulling her into his chest. Her head rested on his shoulder, their limbs still intertwined. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Monica whispered, "I didn't expect that." "Neither did I." She traced lazy circles on his chest. "You said you weren't good at this." "I lied," he said. "Or maybe you're the exception." She smiled against his skin. "You're full of surprises, Roman Dax." He kissed her forehead, fingers still stroking her spine. "You're the only thing I haven't tried to control. And somehow, you're the only thing that feels right." Outside, the storm began to fade. But inside the cabin, something stronger had taken its place, an intimacy that no contract could define. Hey, family, this story is only getting more intense, and trust me, the most shocking part is still on its way. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Let's dive back in. Monica sat motionless on the edge of the bathroom tub, a pregnancy test clutched in her trembling hand. 2 lines, bold, unmistakable, positive. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the silence in the penthouse felt deafening. This wasn't part of the plan. They hadn't talked about children, not seriously. Their arrangement had never included late-night feedings or diaper changes or a nursery. It had included appearances, handshakes, photo ops. Not this. Her free hand slid across her stomach, instinctively protective. Roman's words echoed in her head, "I don't need a baby." Not long ago, she'd said the same thing. She'd meant it. But now it wasn't about what she needed. It was about the tiny life quietly forming inside her, real, innocent, and unexpected. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Would he think she did it on purpose? Would he accuse her of trapping him? Would he walk away? Monica stood and caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same, no visible change, but everything inside her had shifted. There was no undoing it. She pressed a palm to her belly. "It's okay," she whispered, voice cracking. "You're safe." Her mind reeled with questions. Could she raise a child alone? Could she trust Roman with this kind of vulnerability? Was he even capable of being a father? She didn't know. What she did know, clearer than anything, was that she wasn't giving the baby up, no matter what. She looked back at the test, still gripped in her hand. Her fingers tightened around it. A slow resolve settled into her bones. She had to leave. She couldn't give Roman the chance to make the decision for her. Couldn't bear to see that flicker of rejection in his eyes. He had said he wanted control over the narrative. But this was hers. And it would remain hers, on her terms. Monica moved through the penthouse like a ghost, quiet, focused, deliberate. She packed lightly. Just the essentials. A few clothes, her textbooks. The cactus Roman had returned with a red bow. Everything else could stay behind. None of it really belonged to her. The sun had just started to rise, casting a pale gray light through the windows. Roman was still asleep, or so she hoped. She couldn't face him. Not like this. Not when her heart felt like it was being split in half. She walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a pen. Her hands shook as she reached for a yellow sticky note, the same kind he used to label everything. She stared at the blank square, searching for the right words. Then, slowly, she wrote, "Roman, this wasn't part of the plan. I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. You don't have to stay. Thank you for everything. Monica." She stared at the note for a long time. Her eyes burned. Her chest ached. Then she folded it once and slid it beneath the small cactus, the one he'd placed on her kitchen counter weeks ago like a peace offering, a symbol of something trying to grow in the middle of a desert. She whispered to it like she was speaking to him. I wish things could have been different. With a final glance around the penthouse, the pristine kitchen, the rule-bound office, the room where he had kissed her like he was starving, Monica pulled on her coat and slipped out the door. No drama, no confrontation, just distance. She left behind silence and a secret. And with every elevator floor that dropped her closer to the lobby, her breath became shakier, shallower. But she didn't stop. Not until she stepped into the morning light and vanished into the city with her unborn child, and the weight of what they'd created lingering quietly behind her. Roman returned to the penthouse just before noon, a bouquet of white tulips tucked under one arm and a chilled bottle of Monica's favorite ginger orange juice in the other. He had planned the gesture carefully, modest, sincere, and timed perfectly. They hadn't spoken much since the cabin. Too much had been felt. Too little had been said. He told himself he'd let her rest, let her breathe. But deep down, Roman Dax had already made his decision. He wanted her. No contracts, no conditions, just her. And maybe, just maybe, the life they had accidentally begun together. He stepped through the door and paused. The lights were off. No music played. The scent of vanilla, which usually lingered after Monica's baking attempts, was absent. "Monica?" he called. Silence. He moved through the apartment, expecting her to emerge from the guest room or the kitchen or maybe reading by the window with her slippers kicked off nearby. But every room was empty. A strange tightness coiled in his chest. Then he saw it. On the counter, right beside the cactus, the note, folded, yellow. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. He read it once, then again, and again. His jaw clenched, not in anger, but in disbelief. Pregnant, his grip loosened. The note slipped from his hand and fluttered to the floor like a gut punch. She was gone, and she'd been carrying his child when she left. Roman's eyes scanned the room for something, anything left behind, but the small things that made it hers were missing. Her slippers, her books, the necklace she used to leave beside the sink when she cooked. He dropped into a chair, tulips still in his hand, juice unopened. The woman who had made him feel again was gone, and this time there was no plan, no strategy, just a gaping, unfamiliar ache in his chest that no boardroom or billionaire status could fix. He pressed his palms to his face, struggling to breathe through the wave crashing over him. Roman Dax had lost control, and this time he cared. Roman stood at the tall windows of the penthouse, phone in hand, eyes unfocused. Calls were coming in, investors, assistants, board members, one after another. He ignored them all. His world, the one built with cold precision and endless power, felt useless now. None of it mattered. Not the billion-dollar deal closing in 48 hours. Not the press interview scheduled for that afternoon. Not the merger announcement his legal team had spent 6 months preparing. The only thing that mattered was gone, and she had taken part of him with her. He picked up the note from the floor for the 10th time, reading it again even though he knew every word by heart. "I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. You don't have to stay." Roman ran a hand through his hair and walked to his desk. He pressed a button on the intercom. "Cancel everything," he said to his assistant. "Sir, everything is in—" "Everything," he repeated. He grabbed his coat, keys, and a folder of emergency contacts Monica had once accidentally left out, contacts he'd memorized long ago. Her former employer, a cousin in Brooklyn, a former professor from her early childhood education course. He hadn't used the information before because it would have crossed a line. But now he was done playing it safe. He called his driver. "We're going to East Harlem, now." As the car pulled away from the tower, Roman stared out the window, expression unreadable, but heart-pounding. Not with fear, but determination. He didn't care what bridges he had to burn, what headlines might spin, what business partners would whisper behind his back. He wasn't letting Monica walk away thinking she had to raise his child alone. She'd left him with a note. He planned to answer in person. Roman's car skidded to a stop in front of a modest elementary school tucked between two aging brick buildings on a quiet Harlem street. There was no red carpet, no valet, no polished glass facade, just painted fencing, worn pavement, and the laughter of children echoing from a nearby playground. He stepped out of the car, adjusting the cuffs of his coat as if armor alone could shield him from what was about to happen. Inside, the school buzzed with the organized chaos of afternoon dismissal. A security guard blinked in surprise as Roman strode through the doors with the force of a storm in human form. "Sir, can I help you?" "I'm looking for Monica Reed," Roman said without missing a beat. The receptionist, flustered but curious, pointed toward a classroom at the end of the hallway. "She's with her kids. You'll have to wait." But Roman was already walking. The closer he got to the door, the louder his heart pounded. Doubt crept in, whispering reminders of all the things he hadn't said, all the ways he'd failed her, all the walls he'd built between them, only to watch her slip through the cracks. He stopped outside the classroom, her voice floating into the hallway. "All right, everyone, quiet hands while we wrap up our story." Roman exhaled, then pushed open the door. 20 wide-eyed children turned in unison as the tall man in a charcoal coat stepped inside. Monica stood at the front of the class, marker in hand, mouth slightly open. She froze. He did not. "I read your note," he said aloud. The kids gasped. Monica blinked, stunned. "I don't agree with it," he continued. "Not a single word." "Roman," she whispered, but her voice caught. He walked further into the room, never taking his eyes off her. "You said I didn't have to stay, that you were keeping the baby, that it wasn't part of the plan." He paused, breathing hard. "But I don't care about the plan. I care about you, and I care about our child." Silence. Even the kids stayed quiet. One of the girls in the front row whispered, "Is that your boyfriend, Miss Monica?" Roman kept going. "You once told me that real people break rules, that life isn't efficient, that chaos teaches us what matters." He was standing in front of her now, voice low but firm. "Well, you are my chaos, and I don't want the version of my life that ends with you walking away." Tears welled in Monica's eyes, her hands trembling. "Roman, I love you," he said. The words dropped like thunder in the quiet room. One of the boys clapped. Another shouted, "He loves her." The room erupted. Monica couldn't hold it in anymore. She crossed the space between them and threw her arms around him. Roman held her tightly, his forehead pressed against hers. "Why?" she whispered. "You said you didn't need a baby." "I didn't," he murmured, "until I realized the baby came with you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I didn't know if you could handle this." He brushed them away with his thumbs. "I don't want to handle it. I want to live it, with you." The kids burst into cheers behind them. Monica laughed through her tears, her hands gripping the lapels of his coat. "Miss Monica has a boyfriend." One of the kids shouted. "More than a boyfriend," Roman said, still holding her close. "She's my reason now." Monica's hands trembled as she gripped Roman's coat. His body so close, it felt like the space between them had never existed. The noise of the children faded into a background hum. All she could hear now was his breath, steady and real, just inches from hers. "I don't want to lose you," he said, his voice raw. She blinked fast, trying to stay composed in front of 24 curious eyes. "You already had every reason to walk away." "I've walked away from a lot of things," he said, "but not this, not you." Her fingers tightened at his collar. "I didn't leave to punish you. I needed to choose myself for once." He nodded, not offended, not defensive. "And I needed to know what it felt like to want something I couldn't control." She took a breath. "So what now?" Roman reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note, one she didn't recognize. "I wrote this yesterday. I didn't plan to give it to you. I didn't even know if I'd see you again." He unfolded the paper and read aloud, quietly. "I don't know what love is supposed to feel like, but if it means craving someone's presence in silence or seeing their smile echo in every empty room, then I think I've been in it for longer than I realized." He met her eyes. "That's what you've done to me, Monica." Her throat tightened. Her arms wrapped around him again without hesitation. This time, it wasn't for comfort. It was homecoming. The classroom clapped wildly now, some kids chanting her name. A few started whispering about wedding dresses and cake. Monica turned to them, laughing through her tears. All right, calm down. Miss Monica still has homework to grade." Roman smirked. "Guess I just interrupted class." She leaned in. "You interrupted everything, and I'm so glad you did." As the teacher gathered her things, Roman whispered, "Come home." She paused, then nodded. "Let's go." And with fingers interlaced, Monica Reed and Roman Dax walked out of the classroom, together. No script, no performance, just the beginning of something finally real. The moment Monica stepped back into the Crestline penthouse, something felt different. Not just in the air, but in her. Gone was the woman who had once tread carefully, eyes down, hands folded. Now she moved through the space with a quiet assurance. She no longer felt like a guest. She was returning home. Roman walked beside her, one hand protectively resting on the small of her back. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was rich, brimming with all the words they hadn't needed to speak out loud anymore. When the elevator doors closed behind them, Monica looked around. "It's cleaner than I remember." Roman smirked. "I didn't let the house fall apart in your absence. No signs of emotional devastation, broken vases, crying into expensive whiskey. Just one cactus," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. There it sat, right where she'd left it. Healthy, watered, still wearing the tiny red bow. She chuckled. "You really did take care of it." "I read the instructions," he said simply. Her eyes softened. "Didn't know you did instructions." "I do now." She looked up at him. "You've changed." "I had to," he replied. "You left." "I realized I couldn't keep living like everything had to be bulletproof." Monica moved closer, voice quieter. "And what are you now?" He didn't flinch. Exposed. She reached up, brushing a finger down the lapel of his jacket. "It suits you." Roman stepped closer too, until their bodies were barely apart. "You're still wearing the same perfume." Wasn't ready to let it go. He leaned down, his lips brushing her temple. "You don't have to let go of anything. Not anymore." Her arms circled his waist. "Promise?" He kissed her forehead, then her cheek. "I promise." There were no more deals, no more rules, no more pretending. Monica was home. And this time, she knew exactly where she belonged. Steam curled against the frosted glass of the bathroom as Monica stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped loosely around her curves. Drops of water clung to her shoulders, sliding along her collarbone and down her back. The overhead light cast a golden hue over her skin. She hadn't expected Roman to be waiting, but he was. He stood just outside the doorway, leaning against the wall, eyes fixed on her like gravity itself had pulled him there. His voice was low, thick. "You're breathtaking." Monica didn't hide. She let the towel fall. Roman's breath caught, quietly, reverently, before he crossed the threshold. His hands moved with purpose, but not haste. He brushed damp curls from her face, then leaned in to kiss the corner of her mouth. She tilted her chin, pulling him in for more. Their mouths met, slow, intentional. No hunger this time, no firestorm. This was different. This was reverence. He tasted her slowly, kissing her as if he had all the time in the world. His hands slid down her sides, gripping her hips with quiet restraint. She sighed against his lips, her palms moving up his chest, fingers undoing the buttons of his shirt one by one. She didn't rush. She wanted to savor him the way he savored her. When his shirt fell to the floor, she stepped back to look at him fully. His strong frame, the muscles cut from discipline, not vanity. The scar near his left shoulder she hadn't noticed before. She touched it. He let her. "Every part of you," she whispered. Roman's hand slid beneath her thighs, lifting her effortlessly. She wrapped herself around him as he carried her to the bedroom, laying her gently across the bed without breaking eye contact. He kissed her neck first, then lower, trailing his mouth along the curve of her shoulder, across her chest, his tongue flicking against her skin like silk. She moaned softly, hips shifting beneath him as he worshipped every inch of her. No corner was overlooked, no touch careless. He explored her with the patience of a man making promises with his mouth. And she responded, breathless, open, trembling. When he finally slid inside her, it was slow, deliberate, like a question with only one answer. Her fingers dug into his back. "Roman." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I've never wanted anything like I want this," she gasped, legs tightening around him as they moved in unison, bodies melting into rhythm. It wasn't about dominance or power. It was about surrender. And in the stillness between thrusts, in the way their hands stayed locked, their lips kept finding each other, there was love. Raw, uncomplicated, unconditional. He moved deeper, drawing sounds from her that made him want to give her everything. She responded with whispered promises of forever, between kisses, between moans, between the seconds when their souls felt stitched together. The pressure built. Monica's nails dug into his shoulders, breath stuttering as she unraveled beneath him, crying out his name. Roman followed seconds later, burying himself deeper as his release hit, his body shaking with the weight of it. They collapsed together, sweat slicked, chest to chest, heart to heart. Neither spoke. Not right away. Eventually she whispered, "You make me feel like I'm not just wanted, I'm worshipped." Roman ran his fingers slowly down her spine. "Because you are..." She smiled against his neck. That was everything. He kissed the top of her head. It was the truth. They lay tangled beneath the sheets, legs woven, fingers still interlocked. No contracts, no conditions, no need for more words, just breath and closeness, and the silent, sacred promise of a life finally blooming. Later that night, the penthouse was quiet. Not the cold, hollow silence it used to hold, but a softer kind. The kind that followed deep connection, where breath filled the spaces words no longer needed to occupy. Monica rested on Roman's chest, her fingers lazily drawing circles over his skin. His heartbeat was steady beneath her palm, like a rhythm she hadn't realized she craved. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yes," he replied, brushing his lips along her temple. "I don't want to sleep yet." "Why not?" "Because for the first time," he said softly, "I don't want to miss a second of this." She smiled. "You've changed." "So, have you..." She shifted, lifting her head so their eyes met in the dim light. "You used to believe feelings were inefficient, messy, irrelevant." "I still think they're messy," he said. "But I was wrong about the rest." Monica studied him. "Do you ever get scared?" His answer came without hesitation. "Only when I think about losing you." She blinked. That wasn't just vulnerability. That was truth. Raw and open. She leaned in and kissed him, slow, warm, lingering. When she pulled back, her voice was soft. "I'm going to be someone's mother." Roman reached out, placed a hand gently on her belly. "And I'm going to be a father. You sure about that?" He nodded. "Because I want this. I want us. I want the life that isn't perfect, that doesn't follow rules, that feels real." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, not from fear, but from relief. "You're not a robot anymore," she whispered with a smile. He kissed her nose. "Because you rewired me." She laughed through a quiet sniffle. "You're still terrible at metaphors." He wrapped both arms around her, pulling her close. "I don't care. You're stuck with me now. And you're stuck with me." They fell asleep that way, tangled, heart to heart, soul to soul. And outside, the city hummed on, unaware that in one penthouse high above the skyline, two people had finally found their way home. The preschool gate buzzed open with a soft click as Monica stepped through, her heels crunching lightly on the gravel path. The sun was high and kind, casting warm light over the tiny courtyard filled with laughing toddlers and waiting parents. She wore a flowy red blouse, her curls gathered in a low ponytail, gold hoops swinging as she scanned the crowd. Beside her, a little boy clutched her hand. He was 3, with skin the shade of soft brown sugar and a head full of tight curls that bounced with every step. His eyes were impossibly wide, lit with the same steel-gray hue as his father's, though mischief danced in them more often than broodiness. "Mommy," he said, tugging her arm. "I told my teacher I have superpowers." Monica grinned. "Oh yeah? What kind?" He puffed out his chest. "Flying, like Daddy. He lifts me so high it feels like the sky." Before she could respond, a familiar voice called out from behind. "Is this the superhero I ordered?" They turned, and there he was. Roman Dax, no longer in a suit and tie, but a navy crewneck, rolled sleeves, and sneakers. He looked less like a CEO today, and more like someone who had remembered what joy felt like. He walked over, arms out, and their son bolted toward him. Roman scooped the boy into the air, spinning him in a wide arc that made the child squeal in delight. 10 out of 10, Daddy," the boy shouted. Roman laughed, a deep, full sound that still caught Monica off guard sometimes. She watched them, warmth blooming in her chest. A life ago, Roman didn't know how to hold anyone close. Now he never let them go. Their son clung to Roman's neck as he turned to Monica. "You're glowing. That's the sweat of a woman who just survived Parent-Teacher Day." "I brought lemonade," Roman said, handing her a bottle from his bag. She raised an eyebrow. "Freshly squeezed?" "Organic. From the place with the cookies you pretend not to love." She took a sip, trying not to smile. "You spoil me." Roman stepped closer, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. "That's the job." Their son wiggled between them. "Kiss." Roman chuckled. "You think so, champ?" The little boy nodded solemnly. "It gives Mommy more power." Monica leaned in and kissed Roman softly, savoring the warmth that bloomed between them, their hands gently cradling the boy between them. When they pulled apart, Roman whispered, "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. And you gave me something I thought I'd never have." He kissed her forehead, then bent to kiss the top of their son's curls. The teacher rang the dismissal bell behind them. Roman looked down. "Ready to go home, Superboy?" The child nodded. "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" Monica raised an eyebrow. "Pancakes for dinner?" Roman grinned. "He's persuasive." She laughed. "Fine, but only if Daddy does the flipping." Their son raised a tiny fist in triumph. As they walked toward the car, hand in hand, the city around them faded behind the sounds of a little boy's laughter and the quiet peace of a life they built. Messy, beautiful, and entirely their own. Back at Crestline, the air was filled with the sound of spatulas clacking against a pan and the occasional giggle from the little voice seated at the kitchen island. Roman stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, flipping a stack of golden pancakes with a level of focus usually reserved for board meetings. Batter dotted his shirt collar, but he didn't seem to care. Across from him, Monica sat with her chin resting in her hand, watching him with a slow, satisfied smile. "I can't believe you actually learned how to cook," she teased. Roman glanced over his shoulder. "I learned fast when bribery is involved." Their son kicked his feet beneath the counter. "Daddy made me banana ones." "With chocolate chips?" "Because you asked nicely," Roman said. "And because Mommy said I couldn't have cookies for breakfast again," the boy added with a pout. Monica lifted a brow. "And you tried anyway?" He grinned proudly, chocolate smudged at the corner of his mouth. Roman plated the pancakes and brought them to the island. He poured syrup carefully, then sat beside them, brushing a napkin across their son's cheek. "You know what I never thought I'd be good at?" he said quietly. Monica looked at him. "What?" "This. Us. Family." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "And now? I can't imagine my life without it." She looked at him for a long beat. "Neither can I." They ate together, laughing through syrupy mouths and sticky fingers. The mess didn't matter. The crumbs on the floor, the toys scattered across the living room, the stack of laundry they hadn't touched in 2 days. It all blended into the symphony of real life. Later, after bath time and 3 storybooks, Roman tucked their son into bed. The child's eyes drooped, but he clung to Roman's shirt. "Stay," he mumbled sleepily. "I'm right here," Roman whispered. Monica stood in the doorway, watching as Roman smoothed back a curl from the boy's forehead. Her heart ached in the best way. When they finally left the room and closed the door behind them, Roman exhaled softly. Sometimes I still don't believe this is real. It's real, Monica said, because we chose it over and over. They walked together to the balcony, the city glittering below. Monica leaned into Roman's chest, his arms wrapped tightly around her. Do you miss the old days? She asked softly. Not even for a second, he said. Back then I had everything, except purpose. And now? He kissed the top of her head. Now I have you, him, us. And I finally know what it means to live. They stood there in silence, breathing each other in, letting the quiet speak louder than words. The future wasn't guaranteed. But this moment was, and they were stronger than ever. The apartment was quiet again, this time not from absence, but contentment. The dishes were done, the toys put away, and their son fast asleep down the hall. Monica had just slipped into one of Roman's oversized t-shirts when she stepped into the living room to find him standing near the fireplace, something small and velvet in his hand. He turned as she approached, and she caught the faintest flicker of nerves in his expression. That was rare. Roman didn't get nervous. Is everything okay? She asked, stopping just in front of him. He nodded and held out the box. Open it, he said. She did. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, and new. Different from the one the contract required. No documents attached. No symbolism borrowed from a business strategy. Just a single band meant only for her. Monica's breath caught. Roman's voice was steady, but low. The last one was for an agreement, for control. This one. He took the ring from the box and looked her in the eyes. This one's for everything after. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as he slid it gently onto her finger. I already married you once, she whispered. He stepped closer, but I never asked. Her smile wobbled. So I'm asking now, Roman said, not as a CEO, not as the man who once said he didn't want a baby, but as the man who fell in love with a woman who broke all his rules and made his life finally feel like something worth living. He dropped to one knee, not because he had to, but because this time he wanted it to be real. All I ask is that you keep doing what you've always done. Challenge me, soften me, love me when I don't know how to ask for it. Monica stared at him, speechless. Marry me, he said softly. For real this time. She nodded, then dropped to her knees with him, cupping his face in her hands. I never stopped being yours, she whispered. And then she kissed him. There were no contracts, no terms, just two people who had found their way back to each other and had no intention of ever letting go again. The ceremony was nothing like their first. No investors, no press, no script, just a small garden behind the Crestline estate, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. White folding chairs lined the brick pathway, flanked by soft pink roses and wild ivy. Their son stood proudly between them in a tiny navy suit, holding a velvet pouch that contained two simple rings. Monica wore a flowing ivory dress, off the shoulder, minimal makeup, hair styled into soft curls that caught the wind. Roman had never looked more like himself. Crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled just above the wrists, no tie. His hands shook slightly as he held her fingers. They stood barefoot in the grass, because they wanted to feel everything. There was no officiant, just them. A vow renewal made sacred by truth, not tradition. Roman went first. He took a deep breath, holding her gaze. I used to believe in control, structure, strategy. I thought that was strength. But then you came in, with music, laughter, burned cookies, and bare feet, and you ruined all of it. He smiled. Just a little. You ruined my rules, and thank God you did. Monica's eyes shimmered with emotion. He continued. I didn't know how to love. But you never asked me to be perfect. You just asked me to be present. You gave me a home, a son, a life, one I never even knew I needed. He paused, voice rough. I vowed to protect that life with everything I have, every breath, every moment. Even on the days I forget how to speak it, I will always show it. Monica's lips parted slightly, tears spilling freely now. She took his hand in both of hers. Roman, she began, voice thick, you were the last person I expected to love, and yet you became the only one I couldn't imagine living without. You were cold and sharp and distant, but you let me in, slowly. And then all at once, Roman blinked, his own eyes glassy. You loved me before you knew how. You chose me even when I didn't ask. You've carried me in silence, in storms, in the mess of life that we've built, and I've never felt more safe. Their son grinned, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Monica squeezed Roman's hands. "I vow to love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because when you break, you let me help put you back together. Because every version of you is the one I choose." She leaned in, kissed his hands, and whispered, "Always." Roman bent down, and their son handed them the rings. They exchanged them wordlessly. Then Roman pulled her close. They didn't wait for applause. They just kissed, slow, deep, and sure, because this time, it was theirs. And every vow, every whisper, every choice was true. That night, they lay together in the quiet warmth of the penthouse, the city glowing softly beneath them. The ceremony was over, the guests gone, their son asleep with his new stuffed bear and a belly full of cake. Roman sat at the edge of the bed, slowly unfastening his watch. Monica came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his back. "You okay?" she asked gently. "I've never felt more at peace," he said, voice low. "And I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He turned to her, pulling her down beside him. They lay facing each other, knees tangled, hands brushing. Monica traced the new ring on her finger. "You once said you didn't need a baby." "I didn't," Roman replied, brushing his thumb along her jaw. "Until I met you." Her lips curved, eyes glistening. "And now?" she whispered. "Now, I want more than I ever thought I could handle," he said. "More late nights, more dance parties in the kitchen, more crayon drawings on the walls, more burned cookies, more of you." Monica smiled. "I think we'll give him a sibling soon." His brows lifted. "That a promise?" "Maybe," she said playfully. "Maybe not. You'll just have to behave and find out." They both laughed softly. Then quiet settled around them again, comfortable, complete. No contracts, no performative gestures, no distance, just love. Real, earned, undeniable. As the screen fades to black, Roman's voice echoes, soft and sincere. "If you're watching this, maybe you've loved someone the wrong way first. Maybe you've tried to keep them at arm's length. Maybe you were afraid to let them see all your cracks. But the truth is, love doesn't wait for perfection. It just needs honesty." Then Monica's voice follows, warm and steady. "So if you've ever run from something real, maybe it's time to stop. Maybe it's time to let it catch you. Because real love, messy, complicated, unexpected, is the kind that changes everything. If this story touched you, even just a little, do us one small favor. Tap that like button if you've ever believed that love can come from the most unexpected places. Drop a comment below. What's one rule you'd break for love? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because we have more stories just like this, raw, romantic, and full of the kind of emotion that lingers. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances and imperfect love. And remember, contracts end, but love writes its own terms.